Hi, and welcome to WalletPop.com. You know him from his blockbuster documentary miniseries, The Civil War, baseball, jazz, and his new one, The National Parks, America's Best Idea, is showing on PBS now. He is the Spielberg of documentaries. It's Ken Burns. Hi, how you doing?
Great.
Good to meet you.
Thanks for having me.
So this is like your biggest production, 12 hours.
Well, baseball was 18 and a half, jazz was 17, but it's the biggest in terms of budget.
Yeah.
It's the biggest in terms of time. Over 10 years, 6 years shooting. I mean, we had to film from the gates of the Arctic National Park in northern Alaska to the dry tortugas off the Florida Keys, from Hawaii volcanoes to Acadia National Park, where the first rays of sunlight hit the United States, and every place in between.
So you're hoping that people actually do go out and see their parks after they see this
Absolutely. You know, after the Civil War aired 20 years ago, I was at Gettysburg 3 or 4 years later, and I was walking across the lawn of the visitors center with the superintendent, and he reaches down, he picks up a popsicle wrapper, and he waves it in my face, and he says, "It's all your fault." You know, his attendance had gone up 200, 300% and stayed there.
But it's not your fault. There's stories in the film about people who carve their initials onto the geysers.
Yeah.
You know, so
it's
been going on for
there's
generations.
There's a tension of people going to these places and loving them to death. But that's a good democratic tension to have. What the Gettysburg story tells you is that what you want are more people coming to the parks. And he loved the fact that he had 200, 300% increase in visitation after the Civil War series, and was mad at me. And I hope that all the superintendents of all 391 units of the National Park Service are mad at me after this series.
I take it from this series that you're not a big fan of the term staycationing. You want people to get out there. From what
you know, it's so funny. I watched this sort of, you know WALL-E, the great Pixar film of recent years. They envision a world that's been decimated by our environmental inattention, but all the people just stay in one place stationary and do nothing, and they're big fat blobs. And what the national parks, you see people in the national parks, they're lean and they're happy and they're doing something, and they still have their, they still tweet, they still got their, Facebook, they still are the video games, they still are online, they're surfing the net. It's still all there, but they've got an extra dimension that makes them more well-rounded and wholer people and more attractive to other people. I mean, pretty soon, if it's all about this, you've just built your own cocoon.
I've got to ask you the question everyone wanted me to ask when you were coming. You
know
what it is.
The Ken Burns effect.
Exactly.
Okay, so
what is it like?
7 or 8 years ago, Steve Jobs called me up and he said, "I want you to come to Cupertino, California." Of course, you would go and meet Steve Jobs. And he introduced me to a couple of technicians who'd been laboring for a long time to perfect what they called, as a working title, the Ken Burns effect, which allowed people who downloaded their photographs into all Mac computers to zoom or pan across them, which is sort of an abbreviated version of a technique I've employed for 35 years to bring old photographs alive.
It brings motion to something still.
Exactly, to treat an old photograph the way a feature filmmaker would do a master shot, so that you've got the chance of a long, a medium, a close, an extreme close-up, a tilt, a pan, a reveal, inserts of certain details, and to make that photograph come alive, and not just look at it, but listen to it. You know, are those troops tramping? Are the cannons firing? Are the bats cracking? Is the saxophone wailing? All of those things I was adding to the photograph. So here was an abbreviated version, and this was like November, and every Mac computer from January on would have them, and we want to keep the name. And I said, don't do commercial endorsements. And then, his face dropped, and I said, well, look, maybe if you gave me some equipment that I could give to nonprofits, and I've given to educational institutions and a nonprofit for babies in poverty that my wife founded and runs, maybe we can do that. And so the great thing is that I'm not a Luddite, but I'm working so much out in the world that I don't have much time to perfect a lot of this stuff. But I'll walk by an Apple store and people will pile out and they will tell me about these ways that they've applied it, and I have to assume this sort of inscrutable Yoda-like cross-eyed expression, like, of course you did, and then get the hell out of there before they discover what a fraud I am.
No. I think that we might want to end with our own Ken Burns effect. So it's just smile, and we've just been through the interview. This is WalletPop.com.